Okay, today we're doing lesson 9.4. We're going to be finding the volume of prisms and cylinders. Let's take a look at the warm-up. What is the surface area of a cube with 3-inch sides? Now, according to the formula, it's perimeter of the base times the height plus 2 times the area of the base. So for the perimeter, if you have a cube, you would add all the sides or multiply 3 times 4. And your height, of course, is also going to be 3. And then here, you'd multiply 2. And then to find the area of a base, when it is a cube, that would be a square. So that would be 3 times 3. So what you wind up multiplying here is 12 times 3 and 2 times 9. 12 times 3 is 36, plus 2 times 9 is 18. Add 36 plus 18, and you get 54 square inches because it's surface area. It would be square. Okay, number 2, what is the surface area of a cone with a 7-inch radius and a 20-inch slanted height? Okay, so for the formula for surface area of a cone, it is pi times the radius times the slanted height plus pi r squared. So we'd have pi times the radius, which is 7, times the slanted height, which is 20, plus pi times the radius squared, which is 7 squared. Pi times 7 times 20, go ahead and round it to the 10th like we always do, is 439.8. Plus pi times 7 squared would be 153.9. Add those two together and you get 593.7. It does say inches, so that would be square inches. Okay, now we're talking about volume. Volume is how much space a three-dimensional figure occupies. Another way to define volume is how much a three-dimensional shape can hold. I like to think of this as like filling it up with water. Like if I wanted to fill my classroom up with water, that would be volume. Okay. Area, like we talked about, is the floor, like all the squares on the floor. And then perimeter would be if I wanted to put lights all around my ceiling, all around the top. That would be perimeter. Okay, so the formula, let me get back to this. The basic unit of volume is cubic centimeters. Now, this is something that we have not used yet this year. It's where you put a 3, the exponent 3, and that stands for cubic. And that's because we're dealing with a three-dimensional figure. So like when we found area and surface area, everything was squared. And with anytime you're looking up something for volume, you will answer cubed. So it will be cubic inches, cubic feet, etc. All right, so the formula for finding the volume of any prism is, as we've seen before, that capital B stands for area of the base, whatever your base is. And then you multiply that times the height of the prism. And that's all there is to it. So pretty simple. Just make sure that you check out to see what is your base and then follow the formula for the area of that. So just be cautious there. Okay, so on number 2, on example number 1, find the volume of the right rectangular prism below. So you can see that it is 3 blocks high. It is 5 blocks wide and 4 blocks deep. So the area of my base is going to be base times height, or length times width. I know that's the way you learned it when you were young, because that's a rectangle. So you're going to do B times H. So the area of the base would be 5 times 4. And then that gets multiplied by the height of the prism, which is 3. So 20 times 3 would be 60. It says blocks. So that's going to be cubic blocks. And that's all there is to it. Not very difficult. Okay, number 2, a typical shoebox is 8 inches by 14 inches, and the height is 6 inches. What is the volume? So you have area of the base times the height. Area of the base would be 8 times 14, and then times the height, which it tells you right there is 6. Now, 8 times 14 times 6. And when you enter that, you will get 672, and this is cubic inches. Okay, example number 3. You have a small triangular prism-shaped tent. How much volume does it have once it is set up? Now, it tells you it's a triangular prism, so that means your base is going to be a triangle. So be careful there. Area of a triangle is base times the height, not big B. Let's go with small b, because that means your base of your triangle. Base times height divided by 2. Okay, and then that gets multiplied by your height, which it says is 7. So base times height of the triangle, 4 times 3 divided by 2, and then times 7. 4 times 3 divided by 2, that would be 6 times 7. So your answer is 42 cubic feet. All right, let's keep going. Okay, now there's a volume congruence postulate, and that just simply says that if two solids are congruent, then their volumes are congruent. So you may look at those two shapes there and think that they're not congruent, but when you look carefully, it's 6 by 12 by 10, 6 by 12 by 10, and you are multiplying those three things together in order to get your volume. So you may not think it is initially, but once you multiplied that out, you would see that they would be congruent. Okay, now we did talk about oblique shapes the last time, so we're just going to talk about this a second. Recall that oblique prisms are prisms that lean to one side and the height is outside the prism. What would be the volume of an oblique prism? Consider the two piles of books below. So here's two piles of books. One of them obviously is your oblique prism, and we talked about how, you know, your height would be over here. It's not necessarily that slant right there. And it says both piles have 15 books, which means they will have the same volume. Cavallari's principle says that leaning does not matter, the volumes are the same. So here's Cavallari's principle. If two solids have the same height and the same cross-sectional area at every level, then they will have the same volume. If an oblique prism and a right prism have the same base area and height, then they will have the same volume. Now here's a good example. It shows you the picture. When you find the area of this base, it's 40, and the height is 4. When you find the area of this base, which would be a parallelogram, it's 40 times 4. So you can see both of these, 40 times 4, would be 160. So it would have the same volume. All right, now let's take a look at volume of a cylinder. It says in the case of a cylinder, the base is the area of a circle. So like a prism, Cavallari's principle holds. Here's the formula to find the volume of a cylinder. Pi r squared, of course that's finding the area of a circle, times the height. So you're finding the area of your base, and then you're multiplying by the height. So it's the same formula, basically, because you're finding the area of your base, which is pi r squared. All right, let's take a look at example 4. Find the volume of this cylinder. Now remember, your formula is pi r squared times the height. This gives me the diameter. It's not what I need the radius, which would be 8. So then I'm going to multiply pi times 8 squared times my height, which is 21. Multiply those three things, round to the 10th, and you get 4,222.3. And it doesn't tell me what, so that would be cubic units. Don't forget to label. Most of you are doing really good with that. Just don't forget to label. Okay, now this next one, even though it is oblique, it shows you clearly that's your radius. Okay, so it would be pi r squared times the height. So pi times 6 squared times my height, which is 15. Multiply those three things, round to the 10th, and you get 1,696.5. It doesn't tell me what again, so that would be cubic units. And that's all there is to finding volume of a prism and a cylinder.